Hi everybody, my name is Michael Wheeler with Alaska Computer Support. I'm here today to talk a little bit about IT companies and what are the top 5 questions to ask your IT company that you're thinking about contracting. To start off with, one of the first things that's really important to us is what model of IT support services do they provide? There's 2 primary different types of IT services. One is going to be proactive services and the other one's reactive services. Proactive services is utilizing a tool set that normally gets installed on all the computer systems inside the organization, and it does things like monitoring. It can do alerting to the staff themselves back at the IT company to let them know to start to take care of problems before they happen. More advanced pieces of software also do things like remediation, which means that they automatically take care of problems, small problems, that they have logic to deal with in the back end. Those tool sets with proactive folks normally come with antivirus, malware protection. The advanced tool sets will come with things like cybersecurity, which is going to help stop some of the more advanced cyber attacks that are happening these days. Cyber attacks are costing billions of dollars across the United States every year, and the numbers are just keep on growing. It's another type of terrorism that we're getting hit with on a high frequency. The second type was reactive. Reactive IT support services is basically something breaks, you pick up the phone, you call them, you get billed when they show up, and then they come and maybe fix the problem. We do not recommend reactive IT support services. There are some situations where it's beneficial, like home users, very small businesses, but a lot of times it's just a price point. Most of the time though, you need a proactive tool set. Even if you're not getting one from the IT organization, you have to have antivirus. You need to have your malware protection. You need to have things that are keeping your computer running smooth. Otherwise, you're wasting time. So at the end of the day, the benefit of the proactive support plan versus the reactive is the amount of time that is saved by being able to work. You know, IT systems, computer systems are the core of what we do. So we sit down, we're instantly on our computers, we're working away. That's how we get things done these days. And so when those systems don't work for us and they work against us, it's just not a good situation. The next big question is, what kind of contracts do you offer? Do you offer a pay-as-you-go? Do you offer like for prepaid blocks? So pay-as-you-go would be back to a reactive type model. Some proactive models, pseudo-proactive models, are paid for blocks of time. So they might charge you a little bit to have their tool set, and they say, hey, you're this size of a business, we're gonna charge you 8 hours for the month. So if we have to show up, it just eats into the 8 hours. I highly don't recommend those programs either. Typically they represent companies that don't necessarily have the proper tool sets to keep your systems running smooth throughout. Next, we get into companies that do billing by computer. And so that is very traditional, that's a very normal and traditional type. And so they'll go by computer counts. And then there's back-end estimates that the companies are doing to say, hey, how much time do we spend? What's our averages across the board? And what will happen is that they might do everything remotely, but then if they show up on site to have to come fix a problem, that's when you're going to get billed additional for it. There's other ones that also have the bill by the computer, but all additional business hour time is included. So typically these cost a little bit more, but in the long run, they can save you a lot more money. And it's definitely what we recommend. So when we look at those, the big benefit to it is when we have new employees, because those things are going to include some training. Those things are going to include the majority of the basic work that needs to be done. So where they start to divide out is when we get into after-hour support, and when we get into projects, and when we get into new hardware and software. Those are never included. There's no way for an IT company to be able to include software and hardware costs as well as project costs. But a lot of times when you're on a top level plan like that, you're gonna get greatly discounted rates. And a lot of times that's anywhere from $10, $20, $30 below what the normal bill rate is. So that in itself can be a huge savings. And you gotta think that mostly big projects only come around once a year, once every 2 years. We should be doing full computer refreshes every 3 to 5 years. So there's those kind of things. And those top level IT companies that are providing that level of access will help you with knowing when to do those things, help you with the budgeting aspect of it. The bigger the company or the more experienced the company, the more that they're going to be able to help facilitate the IT director's role. A lot of times small to medium-sized organizations and even some larger organizations, the 50 to 100 users, don't necessarily have an in-house IT person. A lot of times they lean on their financial people for that information. Because what we're talking about is planning on buying new computers over time, planning on how do we deal with when we bring in new employees. What's step one, step two? What do we do when we terminate employees? So a good full service IT proactive company is going to take over that role. And they're going to provide you with, hey, look, you're getting ready to terminate somebody. Here's our checklist. This is what we do. You call us up, let us know that you're terminating, and we'll take care of the rest. Let us know you have somebody that's going to be in starting next week. We're going to do this stuff beforehand. They get there, we'll send somebody out, we'll do the basic training, computer training to get them up to speed, so then they're ready to work with the manager or whoever you have in-house that finishes the rest of that training. The next question that is a caveat of this is, how do you guys handle emergency supports? What happens if there's a catastrophic failure in our server room on a Saturday night or a Sunday night that's going to cause great downtime? So a lot of companies, the majority of the companies, are going to bill extra for that. Particularly like Alaska Computer Support, though, actually has emergency care on its top level. And so what we have done is we've included that into that top level plan, because the onus falls back on us that your systems are running smooth. Now, sometimes what will happen, though, it causes a catastrophic failure, is that there's an infrastructure failure. There is something in the building, there was something with one of the other vendors, and that causes this massive failure. And the understanding that we have is that you should not have to burden that cost of that emergency on top of all the other parts that you're having to pay for. So if there's a building issue, now you got to pay for the building problem. And if you had a sub-vendor problem, they're going to bill you as well. Now you shouldn't have to pay for your IT problems on top of that, especially if we have a long-term relationship that we're going with. So the next question that we're going to talk about when those kind of situations happen is what kind of availability? So the third question would be, what is the response time and how do you handle heavy workloads? So there's two sides to it, of course. There's the during business hours and then there's the after hours. I would expect to hear every company has 24/7 support. They should have call queuing and they should have an answering service that helps with the dispatching of that after hours for 24/7. The other thing too, an easy expectation, 2-hour response time. That's not asking too much. During business hours, 1-hour response time. If you ever have to leave a message because maybe everybody's tied up or who knows what's going on, somebody needs to be back with you within 1 hour. That is very normal and industry standard to have a 1-hour response time. Now, depending on how critical your error is, you might not necessarily see a technician within 1 hour, but definitely on emergency down systems during business hours, 1-hour response time is almost mandatory. They have to get the ball rolling on that project. So typically too, your IT company should have enough resources that at any time you can call in, get a remote session started right away to start working through problems. A lot of times it's something as simple as, hey, I need help resetting the password in my email, or I can't find this program, or any of those sorts of things. They should be able to remote in, fix the problem instantly, and get you taken care of and moving down the road. Next huge question here. I've been in the market space on IT for over 20 years, running companies doing it, and providing reporting. Do you provide reports? That's a huge question to ask. Most companies don't. And why is it? It's very difficult to provide reports. They have to be using certain tool sets, and it's also very time consuming to put those reports together. On and out in the market, there's not necessarily a one-all catch-all that provides a beautiful tool to create a beautiful report to give to an end user or a manager at a company. So we've created internal processes that have allowed us to bring information from multiple spots, but it's also part of our internal checks, because as we generate the information to the report, it's because we're doing our job. So the lower people that are doing all the monitoring and taking care of that, the frontline guys, they're capturing data. That data is being then pushed up, and then it's hitting management, and that management's doing the reviews, and they're checking, billable times, and they're checking contract SLA requirements, and they're checking all this information, they're putting that together. Then finally it's going to a director of business development that is then reviewing everything, seeing if there's any things that got missed, and then also at that point making that report so it's something that you can understand, something that is simple to read, that quickly lets you know where everything is at, and just tells you the health of your systems. Also gives you any heads up on, hey, you might need to replace a system soon, or hey, here's a project suggestion, or here's some services that you're not utilizing that you might want to start utilizing. So the last question is going to be, what are the terms of the contracts? So when we're talking about contract terms, we have the ideal that contracts should be month to month. If the relationship's not working out on either side, anyone should be able to terminate that contract. The idea that I'm going to lock somebody into a 1 month contract, or I'm sorry, a 1 year contract, and expect a buyout at the end of that contract, or any of these kind of things, that just doesn't set well with us. And so we prefer the month to month kind of contracts. Of course, some things can't be month to month. If we're talking about software as a service, because we're dealing with third-party vendors, then a lot of times those are, just like a phone company, something of that nature, those are going to get into 1 year contracts. But here again, they have to have exits. So just be aware of what the long-term exits are in the contracts that you're looking at. But when it comes to the actual service providing, those should be month-to-month contracts. It's better for both parties, and also just allows your company the flexibility that it may need. All of a sudden, maybe your IT company's not performing. And so if they're not performing, you need to be able to find somebody that's gonna perform for you. Because here again, lost work time is the most expensive thing that we can deal with. If you have an environment of 10 users and all of a sudden your server goes down and it's offline for 2 days, that's a ton of payroll. That's a ton of lost revenue. That's a ton of lost potential revenue. And those kind of failures just aren't acceptable. So that is my top 5 question list. If you have any questions, you can always reach out and talk to us direct. Once again, I'm Michael Wheeler with Alaska Computer Support. You can find us online at www.alaskacomputersupport.com or call us direct at 907-868-7300.